Hello. I am today going to make a speech that I have written up. Um, and this is my plea to the nation. This is my plea as of May 3rd, 2012. And I'm begging the country to reconsider its stand on gay marriage. As of now, 6 out of 50 states, including the District of Columbia, have declared gay marriage to be legal, and I believe that we are 44 nations short, and this needs to rapidly change for a variety of situations, variety of reasons that I will describe in my spiel. So please bear with me. It's pretty lengthy, but I do believe it emphasizes what I am trying to get across. Um, so here I go. I am making this video today because my conscience leaves me no other choice. I have read another article about another state, North Carolina specifically, that has made it so gay marriage is illegal. I can certainly say that I am fed up with this, and I can no longer sit back and watch as my brethren, my brothers, and my sisters are constantly failed by the government that is there to protect them. Let me read you this excerpt from a document that I hope we are all familiar with. It states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Now tell me how human beings in this country who happen to be homosexual are to find life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness when they are being denied marriage. They are being denied the right to simply express their love between one another. Where are their equal rights in that? You have a nation that very doctrine is based on equality, yet continuously in history we see how we do not follow this. We have seen this with our rights of women, we have seen this with the rights of African Americans and other minorities. Here we have a chance to prove ourselves, to show that we have overcome the prejudices, bigotry, and discrimination that has been so tied to our culture. Yet what do we do as a people? We again show that we have not learned from our mistakes. Explain to me a logical reason why two people shouldn't be allowed to marry one another. Why does two people having ovaries or two people having penises have any standing on the rights to love the other individual? It doesn't make sense to me. If a woman and a male are allowed to love because of the right to do so as human beings, all human beings should have this right as well. It's unconstitutional any other way. No government has the right to policy whether or not two people deserve to be in love. Some common arguments against gay marriage have a religious basis. People argue that marriage is a religious institution, and since the Bible declares marriage as a union between a male and a female, then it shouldn't be offered to others. I bring forth the fact that marriage hasn't rested on religion for years. There's a clear divide between religion and law when it comes to marriage. Matrimony is so ingrained in law these days that you'll be want to find any religious link for it. If you look up the definition of marriage, it is described as a legal contract. Like it or not, marriage has become an instrument of legal processes. For example, people with no religious inclination are allowed to get married, aren't they? Now, one can still get married with a religious or spiritual reason, but it's not a necessity to get married. This is how our society has evolved, and we as citizens cannot backtrack now. So, when it comes to homosexuals not being allowed to marry because it's not in accordance with biblical law, I ask, since when has this country allowed itself to be governed by biblical law? Have we not established a separation of church and state? How do we support that separation for other causes but not for this one? I'm just trying to show that we are wishy-washy. It's either one or the other. Be a nation of law or be a nation of religion. Just pick a side and stick to it, instead of masquerading behind justice, peace, and equality when we obviously don't value those values anymore. As I said before, when it comes to human rights issues, we always have been wrong. We were wrong not to give women the right to vote. We are wrong to have segregation, along with a bunch of other things. Are these not example enough to prove that we are always wrong when it comes to issues of this kind? In these instances, it is necessary that the federal government step in and make clear, distinct laws to reverse the negative policies that were in place during these eras. For example, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which declared it unconstitutional to have segregation. I use this example to show that the government must enact a nationwide law that declares the right of gay people to marry. It is a federal issue, and you cannot hide behind states' rights when it comes to human rights issues, because when left up to the state, change does not come quickly enough. The federal government, in making gay marriage a state's right, has ultimately declared that when it comes to the fate of its homosexual citizens, the lawmaking bodies are too scared of stomping on anyone's feet or losing their political influences. I'm happy that the Obama administration in 2011 declared part of the Defense Against Marriage Act as unconstitutional. This is one step, however, but the act is still in law. Explain to me, if we so separate ourselves from religious biases, how in the world could a government declare that marriage should only be between a male and a female, especially when its citizens are comprised of males and females who happen to be homosexual? How and why? Obviously, the Clinton administration that passed the act into law was laced with personal influences. Furthermore, there have been many other marriage laws in our past that we have now seen to be unconstitutional. During the time of racial conflicts and even beforehand, there were anti miscegenation laws, is more accurately pronounced.
Miscegenation.
For those who don't know, miscegenation is the intermarrying of people of different ethnicities. Until 1967, there was no federal law that protected people of different ethnic backgrounds. If it was a state law, a person could be forbidden from marrying another person of a different race. If you did so, you were considered a criminal, a felon. Um, I would ask you to all to imagine this, but you don't have to imagine it because it's actually being done today, just with another class of people. Those anti-miscegenation laws were supported by not just by a system of racism, but also by misplaced theological beliefs. In the case of Loving versus Virginia, where the Lovings, interracial couple, the man being a white and the woman being of African and Native American heritage, um, they were fought against anti-miscegenation laws that criminalized them for their marriage. The judge that had found them guilty did so on the premise of, and I quote, that Almighty God created the races white, black, yellow, Malay, and red, and he placed them on separate continents, and but for the interference with his argument, there would be no cause for such marriages. The fact that he separated the races shows that he did not intend for the races to mix. Basically, he said that God made people different colors so that those colors could stick together. How foolish does that sound from any point of view? Now, the Lovings managed to fight this stupidity, and after intense legal struggle, the Supreme Court found the previous judge ruling to be unconstitutional. The Supreme Court declared marriage is one of the basic civil rights of man, fundamental to our very existence and survival. To deny this fundamental freedom on so unsupportable a basis as the racial classifications embodied in these statutes, classifications so directly subversive of the principle of equality at the heart of the 14th Amendment, is surely to deprive all the state's citizens of liberty without due process of law. The 14th Amendment requires that the freedom of choice to marry not be restricted by invidious racial discrimination. Under our Constitution, the freedom to marry or not marry a person of another race resides with the individual and cannot be infringed by the state. I repeat, marriage is one of the basic civil rights of man, fundamental to our very existence and survival. To deny this fundamental freedom on so unsupportable a basis as the racial classifications embodied in these statutes is to deprive all the state's citizens of liberty without due process of law. Now, let's just replace the phrase racial classifications with gender classifications. And this statement now reads, marriage is one of the basic civil rights of man, fundamental to our very existence and survival. To deny this fundamental freedom on so unsupportable a basis as the gender classifications embodied in these statutes is to deprive all the state's citizens of liberty without due process of law. And that would be obviously against the 14th Amendment, which provides equal protection of people under the law and therefore is unconstitutional. I've laid it out so plainly. If you revoke homosexual rights, who's to say that someday a person might not want to repeal the rights of racial groups to marriage? I also want this to connect to a point that I brought up before and showing that things cannot always be left up to the state because of in doing so these anti-miscegenation laws would probably still be here or would have been here for a longer time and past 1967. The states cannot be given power when it comes to obvious issues of human rights. Marriage is a legal contract that can at times be influenced by other factors, one of those being religion. And being a human right, it needs to have some federal law that declares it so. As of now, DOMA, the Defense Against Marriage Act, says that, um, declares that, excuse me, enforcement of the law means that federal government will continue to deny recognition to same-sex couples for a litany of federal benefits afforded to their married heterosexual counterparts. If that doesn't simply ooze inequality, I don't know what does. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how I can stress anymore that this is absolutely wrong for us to deny homosexuals the right to marriage, especially when we have made it clear in this landmark case that marriage is a civil right. Now, I know people say there are civil unions where homosexuals can be given the full rights of marriage, but it's not just under the title of marriage. Civil unions are just a way to avoid the fact that you are telling people they are not allowed to marry because of their gender, because of something they had no control over. That's the honest truth, regardless of any way you try to spin it. I use race as an example again. If African Americans were allowed civil unions but not marriage, because the nation declared that marriage was the union between a white man and a white woman, would it be okay? Would it be okay because they get every single right of a marriage? They're just not allowed to really have a marriage. If that was the case, it would incite riots beyond riots beyond riots. When it comes to homosexuality, it's the same rules, just different game pieces. If you support one thing for one group of people, you must support it for another group of people. If not, you're just being hypocrites. It's hypocrisy to the utmost degree. At this point in time, the fact that only, like I said, 6 in 50 states have legalized gay marriage is deplorable. And I can say that it makes me ashamed to call myself an American and ashamed to call myself a human being sometimes. I don't understand why it's so wrong to let people be happy.